case that is, honestly, going to make your blood run cold. We're looking at the chilling abduction and rescue of a young college student named Sarah Mitchell in the quiet, snow-covered town of Raven Creek. It's a crazy story, and we're going to break down the timeline, the clues, and the incredible police work by Detective Michael Reed that eventually cracked this whole thing wide open. So grab a seat, pay close attention, and let's step right into the winter night where this nightmare began.
I think someone is following me. If anything happens, tell my parents I love them. Just think about how terrifying that is. These were the final known words of 19-year-old college student Sarah Mitchell. She texted this exact message to her best friend Emma right before she vanished into the winter night. You know, you're a young college student walking alone, and your intuition is just screaming that something is horribly wrong. Emma immediately called Sarah back, no answer. She called again, still nothing. Sarah was just gone.
Section 1. The Midnight Vanishing, Tracing Sarah's Final Steps. To really wrap our heads around how bizarre this disappearance was, we have to understand the town of Raven Creek. This is a place where literally almost everyone is asleep by midnight. And Sarah, she had absolutely zero reason to run away. She was a super responsible student, she had no enemies, no financial troubles, and a really great relationship with her family. She just vanished.
We're looking at a truly agonizing 45-minute window here. At 11:30 p.m., Sarah leaves the local library. Security cameras actually caught her walking alone toward her car. But then she suddenly stops. She looks behind her, and you can tell she's visibly frightened before rushing out of the camera's view. 27 minutes go by, and at 11:57 p.m., she sends that eerie text to Emma. Finally, at 12:15 a.m., her phone is completely switched off. By tracking these data points, it's like we can literally see the trap closing in on her.
By the next morning, her parents reported her missing, and Detective Michael Reed was assigned to the case. But guys, the initial physical evidence was chillingly sparse. Out in the library parking lot, right near her space, investigators found Sarah's scarf just lying there on the ground. Her car was still parked exactly where she left it, and her purse completely untouched inside the vehicle. This was not a robbery, this was a highly targeted abduction.
Section 2. Clues and Dead Ends. The investigation deepens. As the days dragged on, the agonizing reality really started to set in. No ransom demand ever came. Not a single witness came forward. And despite these massive, extensive volunteer searches covering the forests, the rivers, abandoned buildings, and nearby towns, absolutely nothing turned up. It was like Sarah Mitchell had just dissolved into thin air.
But then, the investigation takes a massive, terrifying shift. 2 full weeks later, Detective Reed gets an anonymous envelope delivered right to the precinct. And inside, a single photograph of Sarah. She was sitting in a chair all alone inside some dark room. This wasn't just proof of life, right? This was a direct psychological taunt aimed right at the authorities.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the message that accompanied the photo. Scrawled right on the back of the picture were these 4 terrifying words: "Stop looking for her." Just a blatant, in-your-face threat. But, you know, in their arrogance, whoever sent this actually handed Detective Reed the very first tangible lead of the entire investigation.
Because here's the thing about forensic experts. They don't just look at the subject of the photo. They look at everything. When they zoomed way in on the dark background behind Sarah, they spotted this faded sign. Only 3 letters were visible: M-I-L. Detective Reed instantly made the connection. Raven Creek used to have several abandoned mills. Boom. The manhunt finally had a real target.
So the police systematically sweep every abandoned mill in the area, and they finally hit a breakthrough at an old textile mill just outside town. Step 1, they find fresh footprints in one of the back rooms. Step 2, discarded food wrappers. And step 3, clear, undeniable signs of recent habitation. Someone had been there. But the absolute tragedy of it, Sarah was already gone. They had literally just missed her.
Section 3. The Counselor's Dark Past, Connecting the Cold Case. While standing in that empty, freezing mill, Detective Reed had this sudden, very dark realization. He remembered another disturbing fact that totally shifted the trajectory of this whole case. 20 years prior, another young woman had vanished near this exact same mill.
Okay, let's dive into this, because Detective Reed pulled the old case files and found a single, chilling common denominator. When comparing Sarah's disappearance with that 20-year-old cold case, he realized that both missing women, and actually every missing persons case in the area, shared one huge connection.
They all attended the exact same local high school.
The detectives immediately pivoted. They started scouring decades of high school employment records, looking into former teachers, staff, students, the whole shebang. And almost immediately, one name stood out to the authorities like a sore thumb. A man named Thomas Gray.
So that brings us to the pivotal question. Who was Thomas Gray? How on earth does a guy connected to the local high school become the prime suspect in a string of disappearances spanning 2 decades?
Well, the horrifying profile they uncovered changed everything. Thomas Gray had worked as a school counselor for nearly 30 years. Think about that, 30 years of unique, trusted access to thousands of students. But he suddenly retired right after that very first disappearance 20 years ago. When police went to raid his house, he had already fled, but the mounting evidence left behind was undeniable. The place was empty, but they found newspaper clippings of every single missing person case and, most damning of all, photographs of Sarah Mitchell hidden inside his home. The manhunt was officially on.
Section 4. The Forest Cabin Rescue. The manhunt ends. A frantic nationwide search kicks off. With Gray's face plastered across the country, it only took 3 days for police to spot him driving on a remote highway. Following a brief, intense chase, officers successfully arrested him. But getting Gray in handcuffs didn't actually solve the biggest problem. Where was Sarah? During his really intense interrogation, Gray just sat there and repeated the same chilling denial over and over. I never hurt anyone. He absolutely refused to break. He wouldn't give up her location. So Sarah's actual whereabouts remained a total mystery, and the clock was ticking fast.
Investigators had to dig deeper into Gray's property records, and that's when they found it. An old, secluded forest cabin he owned deep in the woods. Let's walk through this tense, methodical search. Step 1, they breach and sweep the cabin. Nothing on the main floors. Step 2, they head down to the basement, and an officer locates a hidden trapdoor. Step 3, they pry that door open and uncover a completely secret underground room.
And down in that dark room, they finally found Sarah Mitchell. Let's all take a massive sigh of relief here. She was weak, she was terrified, but she was alive. Sarah later told police that Gray had become completely obsessed with her, meticulously planning this obsession-driven kidnapping for months. With this mountain of evidence, Thomas Gray was finally locked away and sentenced to life in prison. The nightmare was seemingly over for the town of Raven Creek.
Section 5. One final terrifying twist. The evidence room. You'd really think the story ends there, right? The bad guy's behind bars for life, the victim is safe, and the town slowly goes back to normal. But years later, Detective Reed is down in the precinct basement, simply cleaning out the old evidence room. And he makes a discovery that literally makes his blood run cold. While rummaging through Thomas Gray's boxed-up personal belongings, Reed finds a piece of paper. It's a list of names. Now, most of the names on this list are crossed out, but the very final name sitting at the bottom of the page isn't a former student. It reads, Detective Michael Reed.
But what is truly horrifying, what just leaves us with this dead, sickening chill, is the single word scribbled right next to the detective's name. Because someone had recently written the word, soon. Gray is locked away for life, right? So who wrote it? Who had access to that evidence room? And is the nightmare at Raven Creek truly over? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll see you next time.